This is yet another lesson I have to teach moon phases to my students. It is a difficult concept, and there are many misconceptions about moon phases, so I try to teach it in a variety of ways. At this point, we're going to go outside. It can also be done inside in a large space. The sun here is represented by a barrel draped in a yellow sleeping bag. You can use anything you want that is big and remains in one spot to be the sun. Students stand at one of the index cards when we start, and they are the part of the earth in that particular time zone at that time. I won't go into the time zone lesson, but there is a separate video about that, and this is what the front of it looks like. It can be found at my YouTube channel, NPMM Science. Now back to the moon phases. So each student stands at an index card, and then I have them all face outward. They will spin just like the earth spins. This works best if you actually have 24 students. Sometimes I have to borrow people to represent time zones if I don't have enough kids. Now, just a bit of information about how I set up this circle. I have found that if I write each hour on an index card, writing AM and PM, and then I laminate the cards and I have taped the back of them to a string. This makes it easy for me to spread out the string each time and then gather it back up accordion style to use the next year. When laying it out, you just want to make sure that 12 p.m. is straight across from 12 a.m. and the rest you just stretch into a circular shape. We had a yellow ball that had been painted half black that I could use to represent the moon, but you can use almost anything that's painted half light, half dark. Unfortunately, when we did this activity at school, I was unable to get the bird's eye view that's needed to explain how this works. So I have set up Playmobil characters to represent the students, and I will point out certain ones that you can keep an eye on as they go around. Ignoring the fact that some of them are Egyptian, there are knights, pirates, Civil War soldiers, and ancient Romans. They each represent one of my 24 students, and I am the lady in the pink dress with the moon on top of my head. Unfortunately, my table was not wide enough, and so I am standing on the sun, but of course you wouldn't really do this outside. And there would be a greater distance between the students who are the earth, me holding the moon, and the sun, whatever you're using, a big yellow ball or a barrel draped with a yellow sleeping bag. So first, I would simply walk around the circle, having all the students look at me and see that they can see a phase change. I keep the lit side of the moon facing the sun at all times, and as I walk around, they will see a crescent, a first quarter, a waxing gibbous, a full moon, a waning gibbous, a third quarter, and a waning crescent, and then back to new moon again. From the student's perspective, we have a waxing crescent, a first quarter, a waxing gibbous, a full moon, a waning gibbous, a third quarter, sort of, a waning crescent, and back to new moon again. Okay. Once my students have seen each phase of the moon from the Earth's perspective, then they begin to shift to the left around in their circle, still facing out, while I, holding the moon, stand still. I can't turn this very quickly because the little people will fall over. Of course, the time zones do not move. 12 o'clock noon faces the sun all the time. This is where it's really helpful to have assigned different places in the world to different students. For example, this little green man will represent Chattanooga, Tennessee, where we live, and the girl across the circle at 12 midnight represents someone who lives in Beijing, China. If you watch the time zones video, you will see how we label the children. I don't usually label all 24, but we will pick 8 to 10. Here I stand showing a new moon phase, and the Chattanooga child can see it. As they shift around, a different person is looking at the time zone that has the new moon, and eventually China will turn all the way to the new moon. Once they've been around once, then I will move the moon to a new position, and they will all turn again and see that everyone sees the same moon each night. When it's a crescent for us, it's a crescent for everyone else. Notice that the sun is still in the same place, 12 p.m., but the moon has moved around to the first quarter phase. This is about a week after the new moon, and the girl from China can see this first quarter moon at about 6 p.m. directly overhead. As other students spin around, now we have students that were in different time zones, and they have moved to 6 p.m., and they can see it. But of course, students across the circle, on the other side of the earth, around 6 a.m., cannot see that first quarter moon. They will not see it until they have spun around to about a little after noon, but they could see it during the day at that point. And again, here's Tennessee. Now, people in Tennessee can see this first quarter moon as they have spun around to 6 p.m. So let's think about who can really see the moon and when. If the moon is directly overhead, that means that that time zone is looking straight at me holding the moon. But of course, if students in the earlier hours look to the east and students in the later hours look to the west, they would also see the moon. The moon rises and sets, and it moves across the sky just like the sun does. And here's our waxing gibbous. Again, students are spinning around. They all see the same phase of the moon, the same night. The moon is moving only slightly during that 24-hour period. Here's our full moon. China can't see it yet, but they're about to be able to. Here's Chattanooga with the full moon directly overhead, and my cat. Not to belabor the point, but here's the third quarter, and notice that students early in the morning could see me. At 7 a.m., the moon would be directly overhead, and then as they spun into the day, the moon would disappear. Sometimes we see the moon in the morning, sometimes we see it at night. In fact, students will begin to catch on that if you can see the moon in the afternoon, say at recess or when you go home, it's a waxing moon. If you can see it in the morning when you get up and on before lunchtime, then it's going to be a waning moon. It may seem like the time zones complicate the teaching of moon phases, but really it helps them to understand why they've always viewed the moon as a nighttime thing, when really they know they've been able to see it during the day. This helps give them that different perspective that they need to understand that the moon rises and sets, which is going to help them understand that the moon is in different positions through the course of the month. There are a few complications that I leave out, like daylight savings time or when we switch back. I don't worry about talking about the meandering of time zones through different countries, and I don't worry too much about the exact rise and set times and the different times of year and length of day. But I do want them to be able to look down at what time it is and look up and see if they can see a phase or not. While we had the people set up, we shone a flashlight where the sun is supposed to be. And I just thought that was sort of an interesting perspective as well. For more moon phase activities and more science activities in general, see my YouTube channel, NPMM Science. Thanks.